Hello everyone, welcome back to our MIT 12063 database design and development course. Today we will see a brief of retrieving data using summary queries. This is lesson number 9 of our course. We are going to talk about how we can use aggregate functions to create summaries of the table or tables available in a database. So aggregate functions includes summing up, finding the minimum, finding the maximum, averaging, counting the number of records, and counting the records that have values, non-null values. And these functions are called aggregate functions, and also they are called column functions because they perform the operation in columns. So we will see how we can code these SQL queries using aggregate functions. Select statement that includes an aggregate function can be called as a summary query, which means when you are using an aggregate function in a query, it's called a summary query. And aggregate functions, as I told, are also called as column functions. They perform the calculations on selected columns based on the function that we use, maybe sum, min, max, avg, count all, like that. By default, all values are included in the calculation regardless of whether they are duplicated, which means whether the record is duplicated or distinct values. Say for instance, in our accounts payable database we have a table called invoices. In the invoices table, as you know, there will be more than one instance of records for a particular vendor from whom we are buying the products. So in that instance it will be duplicated. So it doesn't matter whether it is duplicated or not, all of them will be included in the function. The function will take care of all these duplicate records. And all of the aggregate functions except for count all, the asterisk means all, ignore null values. So if you want to count, here you see it has asterisk, which means it is called all, count all, and it does not ignore null values. So all other functions such as sum, minimum, maximum, they all ignore the null values. Null values means, as we know, the values that are unknown. We don't know the value for those columns. So if there are any null values, they will be ignored by the aggregate functions except count all function, because count all function counts all the records in a table. And if you code an aggregate function in the select clause, that clause can't include non-aggregate columns from the database table, which means if you are using, if it is a summary query, you can't have any column selected without applying an aggregate function. That is the meaning of that. So here we have the commonly used aggregate functions available in SQL Server, and they are AVG for average, and sum, minimum, maximum, count, and count all. So the AVG function, it finds the average of the non-null values. You have to make sure, here you have to understand this, it gets the average of non-null values in the columns. So if there are 10 records in a table, and if there is one record without a value, with a null value, the average will be found for only 9 records. The average of 9 records will be calculated, not 10 records, because if the null values will be ignored. The second one is sum function. It finds the total of all null records in the column, and then min function, it finds the lowest value of the null values, and max function finds the highest, the top value it finds, and counts the number of records which are non-null. And the count all function, it returns all records available in a table. It doesn't matter whether it is null value or non-null value, it takes care of all of them, the count function. So we have basically we have 6 aggregate functions. They are avg, sum, min, max, count, and count all. We will see how we can apply these functions in a table in our accounts payable database. We have first one, these are separate queries, right? Select, which means we have 1 2 3 4 5 6 queries. For the purpose of conserving spaces, I have put them in a single line. They are individual queries. Select sum invoice total as total from invoices, which means it is going to select invoice total column from the invoices table, and it's going to find the total of the invoice amounts available in the table. So we are going to give a name for this new column as total. If you don't use this as keyword with total, it doesn't make any difference, as is optional as we know. And even without as keyword, we can give a reading as select sum within bracket invoice total from invoices. Without as keyword, we can create the query. It works fine, no difference. So the new column name is total. If you don't give this column alias, this is called column alias as we know already. If you don't give this column alias, the column heading will be assigned as no columns, right? No columns, or not known, like that, right? So we will see how we can implement this code in SQL Server Management Studio.